Okay, welcome back. Hope you're all having a great weekend. Today, we are continuing our RBT exam practice question series, where we're going through the next 10 questions and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. If you're looking for our proven study materials, please check out rbtexamreview.com. We've helped thousands of RBTs pass so far with our 3 practice exams, our task list study guide, and our combo pack, which is our best deal. Questions, comments, please let us know. When you do pass, please let us know so we can include you in our Sunday shoutouts. Other than that, work hard, study hard, get to our questions. Question 1. Establishing a neutral stimulus as a reinforcer involves what? Now, when we talk about establishing a neutral stimulus, we mean a stimulus without any reinforcing or any punishing properties. So when we think about things like unconditioned versus conditioned, this is what we're talking about. Unconditioned reinforcers, unconditioned punishers, they don't have any learning history. They don't need to be taught. They don't need to be conditioned. They just function as reinforcers and punishers naturally. However, most reinforcers, including big reinforcers like money and tokens, have to be paired with other stimuli to become reinforcers. So in this case, we have a neutral stimulus, let's say a dollar bill, and we want to make it a reinforcer. How are we going to do that? A, presenting them next to other neutral stimuli. Well, if you take a neutral stimuli that has no property, pair it with the neutral stimuli that has no property, there's no properties to pair or create. So that's not going to be effective. B, pairing them with established reinforcers. There we go. Money gets its value because we can exchange it for goods. Tokens get their value. We can exchange it for goods. That's how we start pairing things together. For example, if we know a kid really likes Hershey's Kisses, but we know Hershey's Kisses aren't the most healthy thing in the world, we can start to pair Hershey's Kisses with a neutral stimulus, which is more health conscious or better for the child. Taking a neutral stimulus, pairing it with an established reinforcer is how we establish something as a new reinforcer. Always read all of our answer choices. So look at C, conducting a forced choice preference assessment. Remember, there's a difference between preference assessment and reinforcer assessment. Just because they like something doesn't necessarily make it a reinforcer. Conducting a forced choice preference assessment is not going to be anywhere enough to get a neutral stimulus to obtain reinforcing properties. And then D, presenting the stimulus until it becomes reinforcing. In other words, brute forcing it. If you don't like broccoli, me presenting it over and over again isn't going to suddenly make it reinforcing. Now, we might get lucky, and out of the blue, all of a sudden, broccoli is a reinforcer. Odds are, though, it's going to become more aversive than anything rather than become a reinforcer. That's not going to be the best strategy. The proven strategy is taking this neutral stimulus, pairing it together with an already established reinforcer. Your client loves Legos. Your BCBA designs a reinforcement procedure that rewards the client with 1 Lego piece for every 5 minutes the client reads. What type of schedule is this client on? Let's go through our basic reinforcement schedule checklist. First, ask yourself, are we dealing with an amount of responses or are we dealing with an amount of time? If it's responses, we're going to be dealing with a ratio. If it's time, we'll be dealing with intervals. Well, we know our client loves Legos. We know the BCBA designs a procedure that rewards a Lego piece every 5 minutes the client reads. Does it matter the number of responses here? It doesn't. We're talking about time. We're worried about this 5 minutes. So we're dealing with an interval. Next question, fixed or variable? Fixed means it doesn't change. Variable means it's going to change on an average. If this had said 1 Lego piece for every 3 to 5 minutes the client reads, now we're talking about variable. It's on an average. It's changing, but we're not saying that. We're saying every 5 minutes, not changing consistently. So if I'm going to receive reinforcement every 5 minutes, that's going to be a fixed interval. This is how we need to approach basic reinforcement schedules. Let's break it down one more time. Responses or time. It's going to tell you ratio or interval. Fixed or average is going to tell you fixed or variable. Once you have both, put them together, what do you get? Well, in this case, what type of schedule is the client on? A set amount of time, therefore a fixed interval. The target behavior is saying the word bumblebee. The client says buh 3 times, then receives reinforcement. The client then says bumble 5 times, receives reinforcement. What would the next best step be in a shaping procedure? Okay. First, what is the question asking? The question is asking about the next best step, specifically of a shaping procedure. So in shaping, what are we doing? We're reinforcing approximations of a behavior until we reach terminal behavior. Our terminal behavior in this case is the word bumblebee. We've already had the client say buh 3 times. The client has said bumble 5 times. Now, what do we want to do with shaping? We want to continue strengthening this behavior until the whole word is said. So what's the next best step here? A, have the client say bumble 5 more times before delivering more reinforcement. It's not necessary. We already know they can do it. They've already received the reinforcement. Let's continue strengthening the word. If we spend too much time on this approximation, all we're doing is strengthening the word bumble. It's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the word bumblebee. We've established they can say bumble. Time to move on and try to get them all the way to bumblebee. B, reinforce the client now only when they say bumblebee. Okay, good. We've got buh, our first approximation. We've got bumble, second approximation. And now we're only going to reinforce for our final terminal behavior, bumblebee. Now, let's say they still can't say bumblebee. We're trying to shape at least above bumble. So far, B is our best answer. Let's look at C. Deliver smaller reinforcement for buh and bumble and bigger reinforcement for the entire word. Now, technically, this could be a strategy, but it's not going to be the best step first. First, we want to see, can we just get the bumblebee, right? We don't want to necessarily strengthen buh and bumble in this context because we're really looking for that word bumblebee. So C is technically a strategy, but it's not better than B. And then D, asks the client to identify a bumblebee out of an array of insects. We're not dealing with receptive instruction here. We're not dealing with discrimination. We're dealing with this verbal behavior of saying bumblebee, shaping this word verbally. We're not worried right now about them being able to identify a bee out of an array of insects. It's irrelevant to what we're trying to accomplish. Therefore, what is the next best step in our shaping procedure? It's going to be reinforce the client now only when they say bumblebee. We're trying to reach our terminal behavior. You are assisting a BCBA on a case in which the client's dad reports the client will suddenly burst into crying for no reason whatsoever. If you want to help identify the function of this behavior, what would be the best way? Happens all the time. Client or stakeholder, I should say, tells us about a behavior and we ask them why, and they say, well, it happens for no reason. Now, we know, based on our training and our science, behavior happens for a reason, so we're not going to accept this answer as fact. We need to actually identify why it's occurring, right? Antecedents, consequence, etc. So let's assume you're assisting on this case, okay, and you want to help identify the function. What do we need to do? A, help your BCBA analyze data from the client's old company. Might be helpful, right? But just looking at the data of this behavior, when we're not even sure what data we're looking at, isn't going to be the best way to see why this behavior is happening, okay? We haven't seen the behavior occur. Just looking at charts is not going to give us enough information to definitively say the function. B, interview the client and ask them why they cry. Now, realistically, how many clients will actually be able to tell us why something happens? Your own personal behavior sometimes you can't explain, or you don't want to reveal why it happens. Interviewing the client is also indirect. We're not actually watching the behavior. We're doing an indirect assessment, which is not the best way to identify function. C, interview the client's mom and siblings and ask them why they think the client cries. Well, it's even worse than the client source, right? Now we're just going by client's mom and siblings. And again, it's indirect. We need to figure out a way to where we can see the behavior occur. We can see what happens before that behavior, what happens after that behavior. That's what's going to help us identify the function. So D, observe the client around dinner time when the crying typically occurs. Now we're talking. We can take a direct observation when the behavior typically occurs and start figuring out what are our antecedents, what are our consequences, what's maintaining this behavior, what's evoking this behavior. Not for no reason. Now we can try to find a reason, okay? A, B, and C are all indirect methods, which are fine, but we need to do more when we're talking about function. We have to do at least some sort of direct observation before we pick a function. So that's going to be D, which is observe the client around dinner time when crying typically occurs. A client loves Rocky Road ice cream and eats it every day. If an RBT wanted to increase the value of the Rocky Road ice cream, what could they do? Okay. When we talk about increasing or decreasing value of a reinforcer or a consequence, we're talking about motivating operations. With motivating operations, increasing and decreasing value involves deprivation and satiation. Deprivation is simply giving someone enough of something where they don't want it anymore. Deprivation is not giving somebody something, right, until they want it. Satiation is giving something to somebody as much as it takes to where they don't want it anymore. So you're either deprived and you really want it, or you're satiated and you don't want it. In this case, the client loves Rocky Road and eats it every day. If we want to increase the value of Rocky Road, well, what should we do? A, tell the client's parents to deprive the client of ice cream outside of services. Okay, excellent, right? If he's only getting ice cream during services, think about the value. It's his favorite ice cream. He loves eating it. He eats it every day. Think about if he only was able to eat it during services. Think about the motivation to earn that Rocky Road. Think about the value of the Rocky Road. Okay, he only gets it during that one time. Think about your favorite restaurant that you, let's say, eat at once a month and how excited you are for that once a month, the value, right? Because you've been deprived. If you ate at that favorite restaurant all the time, well, slowly you satiate, the value is not as high. B, tell the client's parents to give the client all the ice cream they want as long as they ask for it. That's going to satiate them. If anything, it most likely won't increase the value. Okay, they're getting as much as they want. No extra motivation for when you get there to work for it. C, give the client strawberry ice cream instead of Rocky Road. Theoretically, because they're deprived of Rocky Road, but they're still getting ice cream. Okay, so it won't necessarily increase or decrease the value of Rocky Road in theory. Now it always could, but it's really not going to be the best strategy. They're still getting ice cream. It's just a different type of ice cream. And then D, increase the response requirement to obtain a Rocky Road. Well, this can certainly lead to things like ratio strain. And so if we put a response requirement on it, we might destroy the value of Rocky Road. We might find out it's actually not that reinforcing. They don't want to increase the response requirement. They just like it because it's available. Okay. We're talking about increasing the value. And then to do that, we need to deprive them. So we need to tell the client's parents to deprive the client of ice cream outside of services. An RBT volunteered to work at her company's client picnic. All the clients and parents attended to eat and play games. The RBT took several pictures during that day and now wants to share them on Instagram. What should the RBT do? We should all know this by now as RBTs. The ethics code is extremely clear. Okay. Extremely clear about what RBTs do with social media and client pictures. The ethics code states RBTs do not post clients' social media. There's no stipulation. There's no if, but I have that. They just say RBTs don't do it. Okay. That's what the ethical code says. So in this case, you have all these pictures from the company picnic. You want to post them, you just can't. Okay. A says the RBT is not allowed to share pictures on social media. Good. B, the RBT should request permission from the BACB first. They're going to tell you no. C, the RBT should request permission from the parents first. Even if the parents say it's okay, one, you can only post pictures on a business account to begin with. BCBAs aren't even allowed to post on private or personal accounts. Two, you're an RBT. You can't get that permission and do it. You're not allowed. And then D, the RBT can share the photo with a disclaimer. You can't. Okay. The ethics code, very clear on this, very straightforward. Don't do it. RBTs are not allowed to advertise themselves as which of the following. So this comes up because we were talking to some BCBAs the other day, and we were talking about what BCBAs can advertise themselves as, or potential BCBAs. So if you're an RBT, let's say earning supervision to become a BCBA, okay, you can't make it seem like you already are a BCBA. You can't say BCBA candidate. You can't say BCBA intern. You can't say any of those things. And RBTs are the same thing, okay? You can't misrepresent yourself as an RBT. So what are you not allowed to advertise yourself as? Well, obviously, you're a registered behavior technician. You can certainly put that on your resume or your LinkedIn or whatever you feel. Behavior technician is fine as well. You might as well put registered because an RBT is your title and it's earned and you should be proud of it. So just put registered. You can put RBT clearly because you are. You can't put a behavior analyst because you're not. Okay. BCBA is board certified behavior analyst. BCABA is a board certified assistant behavior analyst. RBTs are behavior techs. RBTs cannot advertise themselves as behavior analysts. Okay. Ethical code says it's not allowed. And then the most important factor when identifying positive punishers is we've been doing a lot of these questions lately to reinforce the idea of what we're looking for in consequences. Too many people still think reinforcing is always something they like, punishing is always something they dislike. Got nothing to do with it. Reinforcement increases, punishment decreases. So what is the most important factor when identifying positive punishers? A, how much the client dislikes the punisher. No matter how much they dislike it, doesn't matter, right? It's only how much will it decrease the behavior. Even if they like it or dislike it just slightly, if it has a big impact on behavior, it's a great thing. B, how the punisher compares to other punishers. Might be relevant if you're choosing a punishment to use, but it's not the most important factor. C, the preference assessment. We're not going to do a preference assessment on punishers, right? D, how the punisher affects behavior. There it is. That's what we're looking for. How does that punishment affect behavior? Decrease it? If it does, it's punishment. If it doesn't, it's not a punisher. That's what we're looking for when identifying positive punishers. How does the punisher affect behavior? All right. Thanks for watching. Check out rbtexamreview.com. Like and subscribe. Let us know when you pass. Include your Sunday shout out. Work hard. Study hard. See you soon.